We are talking about extracurriculars and involvement today and how it impacts college admissions. I am Jackie Pastelnik. I'm the founder of Conscious College Planning. For those who are catching the replay here, I have 10 years in higher education guidance. I've helped hundreds of students and parents navigate through the pre-college world, preparing for applications and saving thousands of dollars in financial aid and finding scholarships for their tuition. I am a member of HECA, which is the Higher Education Consultants Association. I've been a member since 2019, and it's a wonderful association and membership that holds everyone to the highest standards and gives us professional development opportunities so that we can be our best selves as guides and mentors to families. So I'll always say this in every presentation is that it's never too early. So for those of you that are joining us live today, we have two freshman moms, and so they are perfectly on time to learn about this information. So thank you for being here. So why is getting involved so important? Well, it seems obvious that, we would want our kids to get involved in, do different extracurricular activities, but I think that there's value in acknowledging all the different benefits. It helps them gain a sense of their likes and dislikes at the bare minimum, helping them really understand what they're drawn to, why they're drawn to it, why they may not like something, really digging in deep when they're spending their time, whether it's in a club or a sport or any kind of activity, really helping them understand what they gravitate towards. It's also a chance to discover their passions. And so, passions is kind of an overplayed word sometimes, but I think that some kids do really discover their passions in the high school years or even earlier sometimes. So I think that it's good to just always guide them and from an encouraging and curiosity standpoint towards trying new things to see what really sparks that fire within them. It also helps them develop like a range of skills just beyond the academic ones. So this is like leadership, teamwork, communication, problem solving. It also encourages a sense of purpose and belonging. So if they are, for example, performing some sort of community service or getting involved in a mission trip or local volunteering, it really helps to ignite empathy and, just also appreciating diversity and getting to know different people from different walks of life. And naturally, by them getting involved and discovering all of these things and developing new skills, it will expand upon the points of interest on applications, not just college applications, but even scholarships, or if they're applying to a competitive summer program or high school level internship. It really helps to, build up their student resume. But what does all of this mean for my students? So this sounds all great, but, we need to dig in a little bit deeper. A term that I hear a lot when families are asking questions about, what should my kid do? What should they get involved in? And the word well-rounded comes up quite a bit. So if it would be helpful, I think, just to hear from the folks that are live today, if you wouldn't mind coming off mute and sharing what well-rounded means to you, like what, when you think of what the term well-rounded when it comes to, let's say, your student, what do you think that means, out of curiosity?
Your pictures are a great example.
Yes, academics, sports, and then community involvement. That's what comes to my mind.
Yeah, definitely. And so, but I think that those are all actually great examples. And I put these images here because, this kind of covers almost the full board, right? Sports, music, volunteering, artistic endeavors, having a part-time job, being in some sort of leadership or student council position. So this would be a student who really does a little bit of everything. And yes, there are students out there that do choose to really burn the candle at both ends on doing all of this on top of their academics. But the reality is that most students couldn't handle the, really diving in deep into any of these types of extracurricular activities, and also perform well school-wise, have good mental health and good family life and all that balance. So, when we hear well-rounded, I just want you to know that colleges actually admit a well-rounded class, not necessarily a well-rounded student. So I think that this is somewhat good news for a lot of people, is that there's a lot less pressure when you realize this, that your student doesn't have to do everything. And it's really just about helping them to understand their specific likes, dislikes, passions, so that they can immerse themselves into like a few areas. And it's okay if they dabble. I mean, especially freshman year, sophomore year, they're maybe trying some different clubs and kind of getting a feel for what they like and they don't like. And that's quite all right. There's also some students that are maybe not going to find out exactly what lights them up until a little bit later in their high school years or even in college. And that's okay. So if that's your student and they are just constantly kind of bouncing around and just they're in a club for a semester or two, then they switch it up and they're just kind of always trying new things, maybe that's just a part of their journey. And that's totally okay. I will say though, like for certain selective colleges, they might want to see somebody that is dedicated in one or two fields, right? So if it's a student that is not really finding their thing, it's just hard to say, because colleges do evaluate students holistically. So it's not just the activities, it's not just their grades, and their skills. Like it's the whole kit and caboodle. So I just like to point that out, because I think that a lot of people are like, oh, well, they have to have leadership, they have to have community service, they have to have this. And, at the end of the day, it's not necessarily that way, but we'll circle back around on that. So, as I mentioned, colleges are looking at students on, basically in a snapshot. So from the time that a student applies to a college, what they're seeing is the student from the 9th grade all the way from the time that they apply, which usually falls within this little snapshot range that you can see on the graphic. So it's, a little bit, past the start of the fall semester is when applications will physically be submitted. So you can see that if your student is only starting to get into becoming involved in things in the last semester of junior year, they're not taking advantage of the full snapshot that colleges or other types of applications are going to be looking at. So I hope this is a helpful visual to kind of like see. I mean, I always think about the grades in the 2 semesters, so that's why I kind of have it like a little mile marker for each, so that you can see like, okay, semester 1, semester 2. And I think it is helpful as your student is thinking about things that they want to get involved in, because sometimes they're only, there's not year-round activities. And so at the end of the day, it's not about checking off boxes. So it's not about, them having to do certain things to get into colleges, because there isn't just this one size fits all formula of what students have to do to get in, right? And if everyone's doing all the same stuff, if every student is well-rounded, well, how are they sticking out in the application process? Because for those who may not know, colleges are selective. There's even some state colleges that are only admitting 50 or 60% of students, while the odds are high for most students. I mean, there is a good chunk of people that don't get admitted. And of that percentage, there's students that aren't going to get scholarships. So diversifying the student resume and be just really thoughtful about how they're spending their time, I think really helps just will help in that regard. So don't have the pressure of feeling like they need to do everything. So we kind of touched on some things of what not to do, but at the end of the day, what really matters here. And so the things that we're going to talk about on this slide are what I like to ask students when I'm working with them, when we're kind of going through brainstorming sessions to figure out extracurriculars and things for them to get involved in over their high school career, making sure that they hit one or more of these areas. So is there a genuine interest in what they're going to be doing, in what they're going to be learning, making sure that they really do care about it? Is it something that is where they're going to spend their time productively? Because students might have a genuine interest in video games, but is that spending their time productively, right? There's always going to be some of that. You got to have some, some guilty pleasure, right? To kind of just have your little zone out moments. But when you're picking things that would go on a student resume, they should be things that represent a student spending their time productively. Is it stimulating and fulfilling? Is it fulfilling some sort of need for them? Is it helping them to, gain more empathy, whether it's working, with members of the community? Is it revolved around a passion or desire for them? Like, do they really care about the environment? So would going and volunteering for their local park district or conservation, department, is that fulfilling something for them? So that's another good check. Also asking, does it demonstrate interest in a career or major that they're really interested in? So if a student is very gung-ho on wanting to apply into a business school, certain undergraduate business schools are competitive, and they would be considered like direct admit. And so that is just one small example of if a student wants to go in towards something that, and they already know that early on, well, you better make sure that you've demonstrated something on your application that shows that you are pursuing that interest now. Even if your high school doesn't offer classes in business or something like that, seek out opportunities at the local community college. Maybe there's a dual credit system where they have some options for high school students to take a course. There's a plethora of online courses for high school students. There's summer camps that they can get involved in. They can just do interviews with other entrepreneurs in the area, or just revolved in the aspect of business that they're interested in. So even doing things like that would demonstrate their goal in a certain career or major. And lastly, this is my favorite, is they talk about it with a smile on their face, because I cannot tell you how many times that I've spoken with a student and I'm like, okay, great. Like we're going through their student resume items and I'm like, oh, tell me about this. And they're like, well, like I was there, but I don't really remember too much. Well, that's not going to be impressive to put on a resume. You don't have anything to say about it. You don't remember too much about it, or they're just talking about it and looking down and, they just don't seem confident. So that would signal to me that they're doing something that is not of genuine interest, that isn't stimulating and fulfilling. So, again, like it's not about doing certain things or, always having something that's like being in a leadership position or being the top at something in a club or group or holding a certain position, but it's, how engaged are they? And it's not common for colleges or programs to do interviews. For some selective college and programs, yes, but, can you imagine if they're trying to get into something and they're getting asked questions off of their resume and they just don't have much to say about it, right? So by knowing this ahead of time, I think it just helps you and your student to be more mindful about how they choose to spend their time, and helping them understand that they do have a choice. They do have power of choice even as a teenager. So really the next thing is, practically, how do we get started? So I have some practical things that you guys can take with you that will help you here. But before we jump in, Does anyone have questions so far? Okay. So first step, no matter where you're at, whether you're watching this and your student is still in middle school, together, you and your student visually survey where they are at now. And what I mean by that is record down in a Word document, a piece of paper, a spreadsheet, start mapping out where they are at now with how they spend their time. And this is like kind of an interesting exercise to do because sometimes, I mean, even as an adult, it's like, unless you keep a pretty tight calendar, you're kind of like, wow, like, how do I spend my own time? So it's interesting to, plant a little seed for your student to kind of see how this works and help them step outside of themselves. So this kind of is a great starting point, because even if they are involved in quite a bit right now, if you are watching this and your student is a junior and they've already tried a bunch of things, it's visually helps to kind of see how they've spread their time, and then helps you strategize where they can fill in any necessary gaps, or maybe it just helps you have a realization of like, what, I have always wanted to be in some sort of volunteering activity and I just haven't done that yet. And so sometimes it just sparks that, having that visual. So next is have them brainstorm notes on interests of theirs, different causes, subjects, and skills that they either have and they want to continue developing, or that they are interested in getting. So skills could, be like, I want to learn how to code, or I want to learn how to paint, or I want to learn how to, you fill in the blank. And this is very open-ended. So just the brainstorming session, there's no rules or limits, just, thinking of as many things as they can. You can also help them and give them ideas, but really try to have your student be in the driver's seat. I feel like they get more excited when they know that it's their idea and it's coming from their own volition, whether they realize that or not. Third is to research student opportunities in these areas. So before we had started this presentation, when we were just chatting, I had mentioned going on the high school website and looking at the comprehensive list of clubs and extracurricular activities, looking for that low-hanging fruit that a student can do during school time and get involved, meet new people, and see if there's any interests or passions that spark as a result. Other ideas are just to get on a search engine and look for maybe different like summer opportunities. Colleges often will provide immersion programs or summer programs in different areas. They're all so very different, and one is not necessarily better than the other. It's really just aligning with what do they offer and does it match your interests. And so researching as many things as you can, because even as a freshman, you can still brainstorm some things to get involved in, because maybe they don't necessarily do it now, or maybe the deadline's already passed for them to apply for something over the summer, but you can find out opportunities to have on your radar for the next summer or two in line. And I had already kind of mentioned it, but just starting with your school and expand from there. You can look at what your community offers within. If your park district is really nice, there sometimes are some cool learning opportunities for them to get involved there, or a student can become a volunteer within several municipalities or districts within your area. Online classes are great too. So there's just endless options. I just like to get really creative with Google and come up with as many ideas as I can. But to give you some generic things, I think this is really helpful. Just like categories of what to look for are going to be clubs, honors programs, either within the school or maybe it's through your state, volunteering, internships, camps, classes, workshops, summer programs, a part-time job. Is there a youth advisory board that matches one of the causes that they're interested in, or a career or major that they could, jump on? Are there any youth associations for them to join or hold a position at? Competitions could be really interesting for students that are in like for debate, competitions for STEM, engineering, mathematics, even academia, like academic decathlons. Any proficiencies that they can build upon by taking certain classes, or if they are studying a language, if they can get certified to say that they are bilingual. Different service opportunities, either locally or through some organizations where they could travel and help people in other areas. Youth leadership, which a lot of times can go through opportunities at the school, and other times it's just within other community opportunities. It could be research projects, self-taught hobbies, mission trips, self-employment. This is kind of cool. I've had students over the years start their own little jobs, or maybe they create something fun and sell it on Etsy with the assistance of their parent or guardian. Maybe they start a dog walking service or something like that over the summer. So that is another area to explore. And lastly is immersion programs that are usually hosted by colleges themselves, or sometimes third parties are the organizers, and then they're just held at school at a college for the location. So I hope this gives you some good ideas of, how to brainstorm, how to get started, how to kind of organize and strategize about what your student can do and finding fun trajectories for them. So don't forget to have fun. This is supposed to be a fun process, and I always like to look at it through the lens, and when I work with students personally, pitch it through the lens of exploration, discovery, curiosity, and make it seem like, do this for yourself, and naturally you're going to look good for schools, as opposed to you need to do this to look good for schools, because they're not going to be receptive to that. So, lastly, I hope that you enjoyed this bit of information, and feel free to share my links, invite people to our group. I hope that this grows a community of people that are, can join and share the triumphs, trials, and tribulations of preparing for college and getting all of those tricky questions answered. So thank you so much for your time.